A seemingly ordinary house on an ordinary street. Only this is the headquarters of the infamous First Church of Abraxas.
I command thee to come forth and bestow these blessings of hell upon us. Hail Abraxas! Hail Abraxas!
The church's founder and leader, the enigmatic Xander Diabo.
Abraxas shows us there is no good, no evil, no redemption. Only what we desire and how we obtain it.
You make it sound very easy, Monsieur Diabo.
Make no mistake. The Master demands sacrifice.
Diabo's activities come to the attention of the FBI, who suspect the cults of kidnapping and firearm offenses. But even more alarming are the stories of children being bred for human sacrifice.
And the spilling of blood. Come forth, open the gates of hell.
Diabo claims that anyone who witnesses these dreadful rituals will fall under the spell of the demon Abraxas, and so perform his earthly bidding.
And so it is done!
Events take a tragic turn in August 74 when federal agencies lay siege to the house.
Shots have been fired.
After a tense 3-day standoff, Diabo commands his followers to douse the premises and themselves in gasoline. But remarkably, among the smoldering ruins, a terrified 10-year-old girl is discovered. She goes only by the name of Lily. Her memories of her time in the house fractured and incomplete. Was her survival part of Diabo's wicked master plan? Or was she simply the lucky one? At a loss to explain Lily's strange behavior, the FBI contacts my Psi Research Center. Lily and I make an immediate connection. Important breakthroughs follow, but there is still much work to be done.
Happy heresies, and welcome to the desert of the real. And welcome to that clip of one of the coolest horror films so far this year, Late Night with the Devil. You gotta always blame the Gnostics for something, don't ya? In this scene, we get your typical evil cult with a charismatic leader, a schlocky blend of LaVey, Koresh, and Manson. Part of the plot to bring out the demon Abraxas to punish humanity. Scary.
Whoa.
An interesting take most miss about Charles Manson, even modern heresy hunters like James Lindsay, is that he was creating a sort of Gnostic religion. Manson's personal god was indeed Abraxas. He even said that Abraxas was a balancing of good and evil, crafting a wide-awake state where one was no longer bound by morality and yet still could defy normative reality, even violently, against those who wish to maintain the status quo. He said, quote, Abraxas is equilibrium, and that, quote, you got to realize you're the devil as much as you're God.
You can't play God without being acquainted with the devil.
As I've said before, Manson was riffing on Hermann Hesse's idea of Abraxas, as his novel Damien was very popular with the hippie movement, including with the Beach Boys, Steppenwolf, and Carlos Santana, who named one of his albums Abraxas. Hermann Hesse was riffing on his therapist, Carl Jung, and his depiction of Abraxas in 7 Sermons to the Dead. And Jung was riffing on the Gnostic sage Basilides in the 2nd century and his interpretation of the mysterious supreme demon or god above god named Abraxas.
Reverse psychology. You really are a good shrink, Doctor. Carl Jung already tried that.
Stop talking! My unconscious mind hates you!
What a mess, eh? The telephone game can result in so much dark magic and some good horror movies. Gnosticism weaponized works so well because it's so powerful. It's the way of the world. All religions and ideologies can be weaponized, and they all cast a shadow. Charles Manson's murderous ritual brought an end to the 60s spirit, revealed the dark underbelly of the hippie movement, and forever scarred the psyche of American culture.
Oh my God, you're from the 60s.
Well, yeah, actually.
Ow, hey! Back to the 60s.
Wait a
back.
second.
No place for you here in the future. Get back while you still can.
And here we are, we of the broken places, knowing that being devil and God means nothing, even in balance, unless we can integrate these forces and put them to use for healing and liberation.
Will our clits explode?
There is that telephone game across history with Gnosticism, but the constants are, you gotta get in to get out, and that we don't leave until everyone leaves the Black Iron Prison. It's all about that Christian Bodhisattva vibe. Charles and the family and Xander Diabo.
Hail Abraxas!
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
And you have arrived to tap into that vibe and get to know the best version of yourself. That misplaced childhood and paradise lost.
This is blasphemy! This is madness!
Aeon by Gnostic Radio, an initiation by conversation into the dark corners of myth, magic, and meaning. A crash course in cult culture and conspiracy. A virtuous virus invoking and informing history, holiness, and heresy. Each week I, your host Miguel Connor, commandeers your connection to bring you the most accepted and rejected scholars and provocateurs to your attention. Fun, compelling, and deeply weird, this is the blow-your-mind cocktail party conversation you always wanted to listen in on. And you deserve to be here, for you are a shining, crazy diamond that should be seen and can ignite the universe with so much wonder.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement.
To take that inner journey and not get the wrong Abraxas, let's get our hands dirty and eat some crow on this special show. As I'm wont to do, this is a summer double feature picture show in the back row, riffing on the Rocky Horror Picture Show, a celebration of Artemis and the coming dog days of summer. First, to get our hands dirty, I will host Charity L. Bedell, who will discuss her new book, Divine Dirt. Get ready to understand all the spiritual angles of the earth around you and utilize them for a more rewarding, magical life. Bigly stuffy stuff. Then you'll eat crow when we pivot to Rick De Yampert on his new book, Crows and Ravens, Mystery, Myth, and Magic of Sacred Corvids. Rick takes us on a journey through mythopoeia and science, from archetype to everyday spirituality. And at the end, you'll comfortably be perched on Odin's shoulder. More bigly stuffy stuff. 2 fantastic episodes for thee, and you can feel the bars of the Black Iron Prison beginning to bend and rust.
Randall is an old Zen koan. It goes like this. Everyone has 2 lives, and the second life begins the moment you realize that all along, you only had 1.
I hope I have served you well in cutting through the telephone game and finding that gnosis that works for you and just you. We gotta get in to get out, and we gotta express our divine spark at any cost. As Charles Bukowski said, find what you love and let it kill you. Reality bends, and we bend with it or break, all with the guidance of Sophia. Or as Nietzsche said, wisdom is a woman, and she only ever loves a warrior. Lastly, Franz Kafka said, beyond a certain point, there is no return. This point has to be reached.
The psychotic drowns where the mystic swims. You're drowning. I'm swimming.
This reminds me of the Chernobyl wolves. After years of radiation after the Ukrainian nuclear disaster in the 80s, the herbivore population adapted and grew gradually. Naturally, this attracted wolves from other regions. You would think they would immediately hit a wall, not used to the toxic landscape. Guess what? Not only did they quickly adapt, scientists noticed they have lower cancer rates than other wolves in Europe and all the animals in that area. This is what we must be as we run with those searching for the truth and avoid those who have found it, in a poisonous world rotting to the core.
The first noble truth is life is suffering, but the Buddha preached joyful participation in the sorrows of the world.
In the quiet whispers of the Chernobyl forests, the wolves roam with a resilient spirit that has turned adversity into strength. Once threatened by the invisible foe of radiation, they are a symbol of life's remarkable ability to adapt and endure. The wolves remind us that, even in the face of daunting challenges, we can pursue our purpose. While we may not be impervious to the trials we encounter, the Chernobyl wolves inspire us to embrace our own strength. Like them, we can navigate the complexities of our world with courage and determination, transforming obstacles into opportunities for growth and renewal. Their legacy is a testament to the indomitable will to survive and flourish, a lesson that resonates deeply in our daily lives as we strive to overcome our own personal radiations.
To quote the great Joseph Campbell, he said, "It is by going down into the abyss where we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure."
Gee, Miguel, how did we go from horror movies to Abraxas to Charles Manson to sorcery books to wolves in Chernobyl? Good question. As Tolkien said, not all those who wander are lost. I have wandered and found. And let us wander together to a fantastic doubleheader.
I was always eager, always waiting to be inspired. I remember every time it happened, every time the dead lifted me with their truth, and now I'm dead. And I yearn to lift you. Not because I want to shine or even be remembered. It's because I want you to go on. I want Ferrix to continue. In my waning hours, that's what comforts me most. But I fear for you. We've been sleeping. We've had each other and Ferrix, our work, our days. We had each other and they left us alone. We kept the trade lanes open and they left us alone. We took their money and ignored them. We kept their engines churning, and the moment they pulled away, we forgot them. Because we had each other. We had Ferrix. But we were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here. It's here, and it's not visiting anymore. It wants to stay. The Empire is a disease that thrives in darkness. It is never more alive than when we sleep. It's easy for the dead to tell you to fight. And maybe it's true. Maybe fighting's useless. Perhaps it's too late. But I'll tell you this. If I could do it again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start. Fight the Empire!
This is the Aeon Bide interview, and with us we have the pleasure of being joined by Charity L. Bedell to discuss her book, Divine Dirt, The Art of Using Dirt in Magic, Ritual, and Spellcraft. Charity, how are you? And thank you for coming on the show.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is all ours. And with us, too, we've got Graham as the wingman. Graham, how are you doing?
Doing very good. Looking to hear about the magic side of dirt. My grandfather was a farmer, and I spent a lot of years in 4-H. So I got some familiarity with dirt. I'm looking to hear more.
Yeah, indeed, yes. For some reason, I'm thinking of the old Peter Gabriel song, Digging in the Dirt, which has so many meanings, but part of this new esoteric meaning is to bring back the old ways. So let's start with in the beginning, Charity. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in the esoteric and witchcraft world.
Well, I'd always been interested and had a belief in spirits and angels. As a small child, I had a couple of experiences where I could see a spirit floating above me or talking to me or communicating with me. So I've always had a belief in spirits. And then in my teenage years, I discovered the religion of witchcraft under the term Wicca. And then from there, I started to learn about modern shamanism, and then I started going from there, looking into some of the folk magic traditions and where some of these superstitious beliefs and stuff comes from. Is really interesting.
Very cool, and thanks for that. And certainly the foundation for this book was already in your childhood, right? You talk about, in your book, Divine Dirt, about your parents taking you out into the trails and really connecting with nature. And you talk about, too, about how your mom was Catholic, but she didn't raise you Catholic, but her invocation of the saints was kind of a inspiration for you to eventually invoke ancestors in a magical way, right?
That was part of it. It didn't seem right that there was nothing in Christianity about actually honoring the earth for what it gives us. I mean, yeah, it says in the Bible, we are stewards of the earth. We are to take care of it, but there's no actual respect for the gifts that it gives and the life that we receive because of the earth. But then I found that through the religion of witchcraft. So yeah, I've always had a connection to the earth as a sacred power and being alive and having spiritual forces. And it just seems that in some ways we seem to forget about the actual dirt and earth underneath our feet when we think about worshiping the earth. We think about the more esoteric things, like we think of creation, we think of fertility, and we think of life, but we don't necessarily think about the physical dirt beneath our feet being actually tools and things that we can utilize in changing our lives, but we can.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and this was an important factor for our ancestors and different traditions. So I know in the Bible, I think one of the few places where it's mentioned is after Cain kills Abel and he hides and buries him. You can hear like Cain's voice crying from the dirt, but that's a different topic, more shadow work or guilt or something like that. So And of course, the old Hebrews certainly were very interested in the land and everything else, but that got sort of shunted to one side. And it's interesting too, because as you write in your book, the idea of writing Divine Dirt was what, you were at a festival and somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I need a jar of dirt," or something like that?
I was selling some magical powders. Like had a good luck powder. I had a wish powder. I had a fast cash powder. And these are, you can sprinkle them over objects. You can burn some of them as incense. You can use them as fillings, as sachets. It's just, they're herbal charms in a powdered form that I like working with. And then one of my customers came up and asked me if I had ever considered magical dirt and working or selling dirt, because at this point other people were starting to sell powders, as people were starting to get into the folk magic more and find these things. And like, oh, I'll bring this product out. So he was giving me an idea of something to get that wasn't on the market yet, and if it was something I had considered. And I hadn't really considered it at that point. But then after he said that, I started thinking like, huh. And then the first magical dirt I actually ever worked with was a bit of a healing dirt that I made from the roots of the plantain plant and dandelion root, which both have very powerful medicinal properties and are also commonly used in healing magic. So it made sense for those two dirts to be considered mixed together for healing dirt. I had to do something with the dirt I had coming from the harvesting of the roots and the plants, and it just made sense. Oh, let's try working with it and see how it works. And I was actually quite surprised at first.
And here we are. And then you basically, what, did the book come out immediately? Did it take time? Did it sort of bubble? Or how did the book come about, Divine Dirt?
It took some time. It started with back in 2017. I was invited by Sean Robbins to join her in writing the very first book I wrote, which was The Good Witch's Guide. And then last January, I had released my very first solo book, which was Container Magic. And at the very back of that Container Magic book, I had a list of some correspondences that people can use as materials to create their own spells. And one of the things I listed was dirt. And I'd also listed some powders. So I started working on a book that was originally going to be about dirt and herbal powders together. But as I started writing, I realized there was too much information for this to be one book. It needed to be separated. So I decided to separate the work, and I decided to focus on the dirt aspect first. And that's what got accepted and published. And because I started realizing that when I started getting into the different locations and working with each location, like, I'm going to overwhelm people if I have both the herbal stuff and the dirt together. So herbs, I love you. I'll set you aside. I'll work on you later. All right, earth, dirt, tell me what you need. And sometimes it's like the spirit of the book itself was guiding me, and that the earth was telling me, no, this is what you should say about this dirt. Because there are times when after I look back at what I wrote, I'd be like, where did that come from? And then like, yeah. Well, it's what I wanted to say anyway, so okay.
Oh, I can relate very much. Do you find it almost draining? I mean, I think I've just accepted in my days that when a god needs to use me, or a spirit, there's going to be a price to pay. I feel like my body takes a hit, and I willingly want to do this because ignoring these forces is worse. How did you feel? The same?
Yeah, I definitely feel the same. I was getting constant signals for multiple years that I needed to write or sell products or do something to be a figure in the community and help people along in their path. And I eventually finally broke down, like, okay, I'll start a shop. So I started a small metaphysical shop online where I sold herbal incense and tinctures and powders and herbs, as well as ritual supplies. And then from that, I also started writing blog entries to try to attract people to my website and my store, as well as to try to teach people. And then from there, I was starting to do book reviews. And as I started doing book reviews, I got contacted by Sean Robbins to do a review of her book, Wikipedia. So I gave her a link to my blog. She read a couple articles, and then she sent me the invite to work with her on that book. So it's an interesting thing. It's kind of like Spirit has given me the space to go the speed that I need to, so that I'm not overworked and overwhelmed. But at the same time, it's not letting me stop doing the work. And It's like, nope, you finally got the message after so long. Time to keep going.
Yeah, I can relate. They can be demanding. As I've told the audience, Artemis called me last year, and probably the most demanding goddess in the existence of the universe, and someone you cannot say no to or else, but I just do it willingly. Who would you say are some of your inspirations, whether divine or physical, in your work? Of course, they keep us going. They ignite us at the same time.
When it comes to the divine, one name for her is could be Freya or simply Lady, and she's considered the Lady of the Earth and the Lady of the Moon and the Sky. So I find simply that Mother Earth and the universe itself. Sometimes I'm also inspired by a couple specific authors, like Christopher Penczak has been a huge influence in my life, both as my mystical teacher and just as a person in general. When I first met him years ago, he actually tried to dissuade me from writing and getting books published, not because he didn't think that it was important to get the information in word out, but because he wanted me to understand that you don't make a lot of money. It's not something to do for money. It's something to do if you're actually called to the work. And that basically is what sold me on. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this work. Because I had that sensation of I'm supposed to be doing this work when I picked up my first book when I was 13. It's kind of like I knew from the very beginning that I was supposed to be serving my community and the gods and the spirits in this way. It just had to take its time to get there, because, well, sometimes it takes time, and you got to learn certain things and go through certain steps before you can do what they really want you to do.
Very true. And again, I can relate. And you say in your book you use two systems, Witchcraft and Conjure. Could you tell the audience what are the differences, as many might not even know this?
One of the main differences is that Conjure is a folk magic system that's unique to America. It was developed in slavery, and it's the approach is all through the idea that the God of Christianity gave them the ability to work magic and work power. That's what he means when he says man was created in his image. That means we have the ability to cause change in our life the way that he caused change. So it's through him that change is created and possible. Whereas with witchcraft, it's more an approach of the power is in me and in the materials. I just draw it out and send it out. So the approach is different. Conjure is highly based around Christianity and uses a lot of Bible work. Witchcraft doesn't really have a specific religion or biblical text or sacred book that people work from. You can basically fit in any religion and work the magical system of witchcraft. But and the other thing is how they approach fixing a situation. Like Conjure has less issues about using controlling and domination magic to get people to do what they want, and witchcraft, that's against the very ethic of it, is like, no, you don't ever force someone to do something they wouldn't ever do. You can try to work magic to open them up and get them to think and possibly work a certain way, but you're never actually trying to control them. So there are different approaches to different tactics in magical works, depending on if I'm using a Southern Conjure work, or if I'm using a witchcraft, or if I'm doing one of the few works I've found where I can overlap them together, like in money magic and in my healing work. I've been able to mix the two together in a couple of workings and have a lot more powerful results than just working with just my conjure work or doing just my herbal work, because I found workings that were fairly identical. They just used different herbs and some different wording. So then I looked and I reworked the two together and I came up with a new spell, new working.
Makes perfect sense. And when it comes to dirt, is it a simple charity? Is it as simple as the land is charged by the ancestors and the spirits and all the historical happenings? Is that the explanation, or is there more?
That's the bare bones of it. Like,
right.
I'm going to use a couple urban and locations like banks and hospitals, and a couple natural locations to illustrate that point. So at hospitals, you got people that go in to treat illnesses. You have life and you have death. So dirt from hospitals or the hospital grounds can be used in any healing magic and any magic that was going to cause pain to someone, because that's the other thing that happens at hospitals, is that people are in pain and
right.
That happens. So, and then you look at a beach, like the ocean beach. I get soothing and healing energy from the ocean because I feel revitalized. But you also look at the way the tides work and the waves, because it comes in, it goes out, so it tracks and removes, it attracts and removes. So by looking at what goes on in the location, the type of beings that are there, and the fact and what happened there in the past, you can tell how to work with and what it might be used for.
Your book certainly covers this. And just for the audience, how do you effectively collect the dirt? What are some of the methods? Because I'm thinking you just can't go to you could go to the bank, but you look kind of strange grabbing dirt, or at the hospital.
There are a couple different methods. One thing I find that is effective is I'm the kind of person that keeps tissues in their pocket, because I never know when I'm going to need to blow my nose or have something get on my hands that I need to wipe off. So I keep those in my pockets. And one day when I was at the bank, I wanted to collect some bank dirt. So what I did was I bent over like I had dropped something, or like I needed to tie my shoe. I took the tissue out of my pocket, wiped it across the floor. It got a couple grains of dirt, pulled the tissue back in my pocket, got up, continued my bank business, and went home. So there are ways to do it. In nature, in the natural locations, it's a little bit easier to harvest dirt, because it's not really out of place to have people sit down under a tree, or, being at the ocean, you're going to get the dirt on your clothes and stuff anyway. So it's a lot easier in there. But the places like doctors' offices and banks, It's often easy to just act like you dropped something or are looking for something, and then just use your hands to sweep up a little bit of the dirt or dust into your pocket and carry it with you.
And you don't see any places that might be offhand. For example, on the top of my head, I'm one of those people, Charity, who I love graveyards. I think they're amazing places to hang out and meditate and do whatever spellcraft you are. But I know some people completely disagree with me. There's no place that's really off limits.
Really, the only things that are off limits are places where it's clearly labeled no trespassing. Or if they have like public parks or state parks and things like that, they have hours of operation. Gather your dirt during their hours of operation, not any other time. People's houses, if you want to work for dirt on a friend and went over to their house, it's only an issue if you gather the dirt when you're over there uninvited and without their permission to gather the dirt. There are places that you want to be careful, like wildlife preserves and natural locations like that, because some of those locations, they don't want you to, pick up acorns or something from the trails because it's there for the animals and in nature. And in that situation, walking the trails, you're going to get some dirt on your shoes. And they can't stop you from taking the dirt that's on your shoes. So there is a little wiggle room depending on where you're trying to gather the dirt and what materials you have with you and like. But in general, if you can get there and you have the permission of the place and the spirit of the place to gather the dirt, you can go ahead and use the dirt.
You also, from your section on cemeteries and graveyards, you also advise leave an offering to the spirits or the ghosts that are there, which should be, I would do it everywhere, right?
Yes, that's, you're supposed to leave an offering everywhere. The cemetery and graveyard, you actually need to leave multiple offerings. Because you need to leave an offering to the actual guardian of the graveyard. You need to leave an offering at the actual grave. And then you need to give an offering to the actual spirit of the graveyard. Because the guardian of the graveyard is not the same as the spirit of the graveyard. They are connected, but they are not the same spirit. One is a spirit that's there to protect. And usually it's like the first body or being that was buried there, which is why a lot of the times you'll find that that spirit has the form of a dog, because traditionally dogs were the first things buried in a cemetery, so they could become the guardian spirits. And then you have the actual spirit of the cemetery, which is kind of combined essence of every body that's buried there, as well as the land that was there before.
No, that makes perfect sense. And all hail Anubis, the dog god. Graham, let's bring you in. What do you think, or do you have a question for Charity?
The first question to me is exactly what is dirt as opposed to, say, crystals or stones? Because, if you're working with dirt, I've seen some, things about working with crystals and stones, but what makes it dirt?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's dirty. That's all I can think.
Dirt is basically the soil. So it's broken down rocks, it's broken down minerals, it's got herbal residue. It's the stuff that you sweep up in your home or brought off your car, the stuff under your feet. That's dirt. It can be, some people have it be gravelly, some people have more of a clay. And then you also have, the soils that companies produce for potting and gardening. And that also is dirt. It's just, it's dirt that was, had things added to it and made for pots and plants and gardening. But you can also use that dirt as well. So yeah, dirt is just topsoil, dust, some broken down rocks and crystals.
Thank you. I was going to say that the sense that I was getting is this sort of like dirt's like refuse. It's the detritus of, what gets left behind as we're going through life. And again, some of that would explain like a, entanglement connection between the person and the dirt that they left behind, their skin cells they leave around that becomes the dust in their home and that sort of thing. What's your thoughts on that one?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what dirt is. It's made from, it's got animal droppings and leavings because you've got birds flying everywhere. You've got the pieces of the dead plants from every year that as they grow and die as part of the changing of the seasons. And then you have, skin and hair, rocks that as people are walking over them get ground down. That's why it's got the essence of everything that happens there, is because it's what's left over and beaten down after people have been there and been around, and over time it develops its wisdom through time, because it takes a while to go from being a rock with a decent form into being ground into small bits that become the dirt.
So yeah, so much magic, so much history, so much force, and of course blood, and the animals that have died and nobody honors them. And in a way, I think as humans, we are here to honor all those animals that die in the woods and decompose, and they're part of a grand system, vicious but holy system that is nature. I think, speaking of dirt, something that came to me was, we interviewed Stephen Snyder a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the Black Mass, and he doesn't think the Black Mass was ever even like, Rosemary's Baby satanic. It was actually just Christians, including priests, who wanted sort of a left-hand path experience to Christianity. And one of the rules for any Black Mass, if you would, is you have to have dirt from a church, or it has to be done in a Catholic church. So we can see that even in Christianity, there was this sort of, the importance of the land and the dirt. It has to be consecrated and it's holy. But like you said, Charity, it only takes, it's kind of limited, if you would. But as a witch, of course, you have sacred spaces too, where you do your rituals, even though by all accounts, everything is sacred or can be a place of ritual.
Right. Everything can be a sacred space, but I have rituals to make it cleansed and blessed for the gods to come, which is the same reason why, churches are blessed while they're being built, so that the God can be welcome there. It's the same thing with the rituals I do with the casting of the circle and the calling in of the deities and the spirit. The space is already sacred just by being what it is, but it cleanses it of things that are not suitable for the work at hand.
Makes perfect sense. And is there a difference or a significant difference from using, let's say, houseplant dirt or natural dirt, or does houseplant dirt from different places also work?
Houseplant dirt is really cool in that it can be used to target the entire household because it's dirt from the home. So if you took dirt from a plant that you grew in your home, you could use that in any protective working, and it would be able to protect the entire household, humans and animals alike. But you can also use potted plant dirt in the house to grow specific things and have specific changes. Like ivy is a protective plant. You could, as you plant the ivy and feed it love and it grows, as the ivy plant grows, its protection over your home will also grow. So you're kind of growing your own protection by just having a small house plant. Same thing for like house roses, money plant, things like that. Growing them in your home, you can attract that force into your life but it also has the energy of everyone in the home, so it can be used to influence the entire home.
Yeah, and I also would tell the audience something that's simply amazing is walking barefoot if you can outside. Even if you do a little bit every day. Obviously, me living in the Midwest, it's kind of limited for a few months out of the year unless I want to freeze my feet. But do you find that too? There is almost like there really is something therapeutic and healing from simply walking barefoot in nature.
And what that is that the earth itself is primarily the greatest neutralizer there is. So when you're walking barefoot, your essence is able to directly touch the earth, and even without thinking about it, any negativity or issues that you have that are affecting your body's energy, it'll be released into the earth as you walk, and the earth will then take that energy and neutralize it and use it for something.
Yeah, as they say on the internet, touch grass, and they are 100% right. Get away from your device and simply walk barefoot outside. It will make a big difference. And speaking of walking and what you leave behind, can we learn anything, according to your book, from animal tracks or human tracks? Is that an opportunity, or what does it mean, Charity?
That's actually, they are great opportunities. Because when I love working with animals and I love animal spirits, but a lot of the time I like to have something I can physically hold to help me connect to that animal spirit. And the dirt from animal tracks are a great way to do that. Because like our foot tracks, which carry our essence, animal tracks carry the essence of the animals. And so you can harvest and gather that dirt from that animal track and carry that with you and use that to connect to those animal spirits and call on the power of that animal spirit for whatever that animal represents to you. And foot tracks, they'll directly connect to the person who laid them. Foot track magic is actually really old and was used to protect slaves as they were running away so they wouldn't get caught. And today it can be used to help you escape abusive situations and get away from problems, as well as to heal and attract money and protect. You just got to make sure that you can identify the tracks and that you know for sure the foot tracks and that you're picking up, those dirt, you know exactly who it comes from. Because if you don't, and if you gather dirt from someone else's foot tracks, it's going to go to the person whose foot track it actually is, rather than the person that you want it to go to.
And this, your idea of the divine dirt kind of fits into the whole concept of container magic. And of course, you've written a book about this. Could you tell the audience a little bit about what container magic is? Again, most of us look for the substance, and we might not even think too much about the container.
Container magic is what it really sounds like. It's using containers to manifest change in your life. A lot of people are familiar with charm bags. That's a form of container magic. People know about witches' jars and witches' balls and ball charms. Those are all container magic. And what it is that you find an appropriate container, depending on what you want to manifest in your life. If you're trying to attract something or if you're trying to remove something, you choose materials that are ingredients that are corresponding to what you're trying to accomplish. You put them in the container. You charge the container for the work you're going to do, however you empower your objects. Everyone has their own different techniques. And then you empower the object that's now containing the herbs that is now your container magic. And depending on what it is, you're either going to work it every day, or you're just going to work it as you need it. Like if you have a good luck charm bag, you're only going to fondle and play with that good luck bag when you're bringing it with you and you need luck. Whereas if you have a money jar and you're trying to get money into your life, that's something that you're going to want to shake and pray over and chant over and work every day.
Very cool. And a caveat that perhaps you can offer to the audience, whether they are skilled magicians or they're getting started, and you sort of touched upon this already with the idea of using magic to control and honoring the spirits and all that, but you do talk about baneful magic, Charity. Could you tell the audience about the risk of using it or what it is? What is baneful magic?
Baneful magic is attack magic. They're hexes, they're curses, they're jinx. It's something that I avoid using unless I absolutely have to, because there are a lot of things that can happen with baneful magic. And the key for me with that is that when you're doing baneful magic, you need to be 100% certain you can accept all consequences and all reactions that are associated with the work. Anything that happens to you, anything that happens to the target. If you can't accept any possible outcome and any possible change, then it's going to backfire and you're the one that's going to get the problem rather than the person you originally targeted. The other thing you need to make sure is that you've done nothing to deserve the treatment or cause the problems that someone is causing you. Like if someone starts saying bad things about you because they're jealous of something that you told them about that you did. In some ways, you brought a little bit of that on yourself because you gave them something they got jealous over. And so that started the behavior. So in that case, you would want to find a way to address what caused the jealousy that caused the behaviors that you wanted to change and stop. And then you can fix the situation. It's not something to do just because someone said something about you or someone cut you off in line.
Right.
It's something that is reserved for after you've taken every other measure, you've discussed it with the person, you guys have tried solutions, you've tried mundane solutions, you've tried getting other people in, you've done everything else in your power, but the behavior or the problem just keeps persisting. That's when you can go and start using baneful magic. But again, you got to make sure that you are 100% okay with doing the work. Because if you question the work later on, it will also backfire on you. So
makes sense.
Don't question the work and accept all the actions and consequences. If you can do those two things, and you know for a fact that the work is justified, then I say go ahead, do it. But these are only things I can say from my personal experience. If you feel like someone did something and you want to give that do a hex or jinx and you don't think there's anything wrong with it, don't come crying to me if it backfires. You didn't have enough reason to do it or you didn't accept it all the way, because at that point you brought it on yourself.
Good advice. And my last question is about the Crossroads. Obviously, it's the place where Hecate and Hermes and other psychopomps dwell. that liminal place, those doorways of perception and time and alive and the dead. As many know, last year I went to Mississippi and went to the Crossroads where Robert Johnson made a deal with the devil. Now I wish I brought back some dirt on that. But what for the audience? What is the Crossroads? Where can they find their Crossroads?
Crossroads are really any point where two or more roads cross at an intersection. Usually people traditionally think of it as a Y or an X or a T, where it's a four-way or a three-way, but it could be a five-way intersection. It could be multiple intersection. Things are is that you're at an intersection where more than one road meets and you can go in multiple directions. Crossroads are symbolic of liminal spaces, of a place that is not a place and a time that is not a time, but is a place and is a time. Their crossroads are places where you are both in one location and another at the same time. And that applies both physically, because when you're standing at a crossroads, you got 1 foot on one road, 1 foot on another road. But also spiritually, because crossroads are places where the veil and passages between the different worlds and different realms are very thin. So you can easily navigate from one realm to another.
Well said. Well, as we get to the end, I should say to the audience, the Divine Dirt is not just speculative. Charity provides many spells using cemeteries, hospital, crossroads, different locations, full spells on good luck, alleviating depression, a whole bunch, a whole cadre of spells that you can use and adopt for your own magical life. But Graham, do you have any last question for Charity?
The last one is kind of, I see it as she's got some modular workings going, where it's like she's got her dirt workings, she's got her herbal workings. It seems like she should throw in some sun workings, and you're basically getting in Persephone and some of that. I was going to say, has she seen some of the feedback and interrelationships there?
Well, it's a good question. For me, it's all connected. It just really depends. Like for Persephone and that, I do a lot more shamanic work where I may use the herbs to help me as an incense to help me get into a different state. But then once I'm in that altered state, I'm in the spirit worlds and I do spirit work there. It's the same thing with the sun and that, though I do a lot of work with the planetary energy. I call on the different planets depending on different things that I need or I'm trying to manifest. I'm a Scorpio, so Saturn and Pluto are two planets that I can't get away from. So I'm always doing a lot of work around the dead and the underworld, as well as changing and removing things from the past and destroying that which has been so that new things can come in the future.
Thank you.
So where do you want to send people to find out more about you, Charity? Isn't your website mystic-echoes.com? Anywhere else where they should go?
Mystic-echoes. No, I have all my other links on there. They can also find me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter /X as Luna Wind. But yeah, my website for my shop has all my other social media links, and I'm always up for answering questions.
Awesome. And as always, it is on the show notes wherever you're listening, regardless of what platform you are listening to this right now. So check it out, and certainly check out Divine Dirt, The Art of Using Dirt in Magic, Ritual, and Spellcraft. Well, first of all, Graham, thanks for keeping us company as we dig into this dirt.
Absolutely. No, it's a pleasure. It's been a long time since I've gotten my hands dirty and doing some weeding and such.
I know, yeah, I was holding off all my puns. I was like, I'm not going to say one pun in this interview, but we had to because it's just well, Charity, thank you very much for coming on A Yum Bite, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for all your work.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And there you have it, ya shining crazy diamonds, yes, spiritual entrepreneurs. Charity providing that earthly gnosis to improve your magical life right now. Led us to our interview with Rick De Yampert. By Odin's dingleberries, it will blow your mind. And your feathers off, perhaps. This is the Aeon Bide interview, and with us we have the pleasure of being joined by Rick De Yampert to discuss his book, Crows and Ravens, Mystery, Myth, and Magic of Sacred Corvids. Rick, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's always a good day when I get to talk about crows, so thank you for having me. It's in the book, but I've never seen a raven. Ravens are not in Florida. So if I'm crow-centric, it's because that's my direct experience here in Florida where I live.
Well, we shall quaff the raven, as they say, and make sure that it goes. So, and
yes.
With us too, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing? Do you have any puns ready for this?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll flip the bird to somebody.
As the crow,
I like it.
As the crow flies, you'll figure something out.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm having a beak experience.
Oh, I like that. I may quote you on that.
Yeah.
There you go. But we have a lot of crows in our area. There's a whole huge flock of them that come. They come and go. In the morning, they all fly in and they take their different positions in the trees and so forth. And when the sun starts to set, they start going back. And it's interesting to. And I talk to them too sometimes. I call back at them, and they don't necessarily like it. But I love birds and I love crows, so this ought to be an interesting experience.
Yeah, the crows where I live, I'm about 3 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, halfway between Daytona Beach and St. Augustine. And the crows come in the morning. There's 5 or 6 of them that show up. So most people I talk to who are blessed with hanging out with crows, they will have dozens and dozens of them that come into their realm. I moved 5 years ago, literally 3 miles down the road, and at my old place, anywhere from 6 to 8 to 20 crows would come by. So I'm always jealous when people say, "Oh, we've got like 50 or 100 crows that come by," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm so jelly." So
yep. Well, that's us. I'm sure there's about at least 100. That's the ones I can see.
Wow.
I see ravens here too. The raven, you can tell a raven because it's huge. It looks like a chicken almost, like a small chicken.
Yeah, I've had friends. I grew up in northern New Mexico, literally 3 miles from in Los Alamos, literally 3 miles from where Oppenheimer and his colleagues worked on the atomic bomb during World War II. But I grew up there in the 60s. My dad was not affiliated with the lab. He was an accountant at that time, and that's where we happened to end up. But I've had friends who've been out west, California, Utah, New Mexico, and they've seen ravens, and they come back to Florida and say, "Rick, it's very easy to tell a raven apart from a crow if you see one because the ravens are freaking huge." And there's a few other distinguishing. Ravens don't really caw, that classic caw. That's a crow sound. Ravens have more of I've seen it represented as gronk or a crunk kind of sound. And there's the Cornell University has an excellent ornithology website, and they have a video there of crow and ravens and how to tell them apart. Yeah, I hope to see a raven one day. So,
And as you write, Rick, they don't get along. They have like a cold war between them. They're not
yeah,
allies.
exactly. They're not, and there have been studies on that about how they will have dust ups, and that's the thing about crows and ravens is that there is uh, a significant amount of research, scientific scholars. I mentioned in my book John Marsleff I think he's still at the University of Washington. He's like the crow guy. I remember seeing a photo. I think it was, I'm not sure what magazine it was in, but it was literally a crow. It had been sedated, and he was on his back and going into an MRI machine. So just so they could study the brain patterns of these creatures because they're so intelligent. They're up there. It's Marsleff. He's the one who calls them feathered apes because their intelligence is on a par with the chimpanzees and apes and dolphins. But as I point out, uh, I only see apes in zoos. Even though I'm close to the ocean, I will fleetingly see dolphins in the intercoastal waterway, or sometimes when I'm on the beach. But crows and ravens, crows more. They're more what I call human gregarious. Uh, they're everywhere. They're everywhere except Antarctica, and there's different species around the world. Um, but I they are the most intelligent creature that most people will have the chance to encounter. Um, and you don't have to go into the deep woods. In fact, it's kind of opposite. In my experience, I see more crows when I go to my local Target shopping center than when I go take hikes into the deep woods here in Florida. So they're everywhere. If you watch them for any amount of time, and this is what obviously what happened to the ancient Celts and the ancient Norse, even back to the Lascaux cave in France, that cave art.
Yeah, Rick, we want to get to all of that for sure. Good on your
Sure.
book. Your
Yeah.
excellent book, but I want to stick a little bit with the crows as we know today. I
Sure.
think you're describing them as I think they're smarter than most humans, dare I say. But and I wanted also to mention to Vance, Vance, you should get the book because Rick has these rituals, including how to reach out to a crow magically, give it a
Ooh.
name. You know what I mean? Connect with the crow. So you might enjoy that on your way to work or something. And it's very specific, great spells. Again, I have a copy of the book from the good people at Llewellyn. Shout out to Kat. And what I love about their books is there's always something useful and helpful. It's not just data, but the authors give you something to adopt into your magical theurgic life. So with that said, just a quick question. It's a bit of a side question. Have you ever watched the movie The Crow with Brandon Lee?
I have not.
Oh, that's surprising.
I have not. And by the time I can't remember the timeline, but I'm not sure when his death. Didn't he get killed during the filming, maybe of the sequel? I think.
No, the first one. Yeah,
it was the first one.
Yeah,
and that just kind of bummed me out. Things I read about him that he seemed in. I can't remember his character, but he was very much lamented and grieved over, and that just kind of I should see it. That's a deficiency in my crowitude.
Yeah, I was gonna say because it does encompass the crow that you talk about, the travels between worlds, messenger to the gods, connected to death, but also rejuvenating factor. So it's all there. But before we get into the mystical thing with the crows again, you approach it from so many different ways: scientific, zoological, spiritual, mythological, shamanistic. And so the crows are that smart. You talk about what they can make their own tools. They have funerals. I mean, there's a lot of them. And of course, you say some of them are iffy, but some of them are pretty amazing, aren't they?
Oh, yes, and again, that's one thing about just becoming a Corvid file, I guess, if you want to coin a word. Corvids are the family
Right.
of birds that crows and ravens and other birds are a part of, uh, and so it's not. I don't know. I have this what I call my rat prag brain, my rational pragmatic brain, and then on the other side is my misty into brain, my mystical intuitive brain. And they're constantly chafing at each other. So I'm trying to let my mystical intuitive
Right.
side, uh, she's gotten to where she wins more of these battles. But all that is to say that that's part of why I find Corvids so fascinating is that there is this natural nature, startling evidence that they are exceptional creatures. And it's very easy to see how the ancients would think, oh, they're somehow connected to the gods and goddesses. Uh, but their behaviors, YouTube, they're just filled with videos of the crazy things crows do. They're very playful, and I know other animals are playful, dogs, cats, whatever. Crows seem to be beyond the beyond. Uh, I know a number of my fellow writers on crows, and I had this insight. And then when I started reading as much as I could, a number of people who have written crow books will say something like, they always seem to be thinking. They look like they're thinking, they're deliberating, they're calculating. And I've had exactly that during my 15 plus years of really watching and absorbing crow behavior. They seem to be watching us as much as we watch them. Uh, so um, so yeah, I don't did I answer your question?
For sure, for sure. And well, let's go back in time. First veneration of the crow, as you write, that's the and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce it, the Lacau Birdman, is that it?
I don't know if it's pronounced Lacau or Lasco. I've tried to find out, but it's anyway. We'll spell it for listeners. Lascaux. It's French. It's that cave in France where there's all these just stupendous, fascinating cave paintings. They're not the oldest cave paintings and cave drawings in the world, but they're right up there. And they date back, scientists say, about uh, 18 to 17 to 1,000 to 19,000 years ago. And there's this one startling image of a figure lying on its back, and it's got a bird head and it's got bird hands, and it doesn't necessarily look like a crow, but a number of scholars think it is a crow, and I think it's a crow, and it's very shamanic. It's like something's going on here. And then right next to this figure that's lying on its back is this staff with a bird on top of it. And one thing I found interesting is that these paintings in that cave, they're so beautiful. They're fascinating. It's like these our human ancestors. It's like there were Picassos at work, and yet these human figures, the Birdman shaman, as they call it, it looks less beautiful. It looks less. It looks more like a child's drawing, and I don't know why that is. The animals look so graceful, and these herds of bison and antelopes and tigers, and yet this human hybrid, bird animal hybrid, just looks like it was drawn by a sixth grader. So obviously it was very significant. The researchers don't know what exactly is going on. and I cover this in the book, there's so many theories about what's going on and what motivated this ancient artist to create this scenario. But I to me, I think it's this figure is in a trance, and somehow this figure of this human or proto-human, I guess it was human, we were Homo sapiens by then, 20,000, 19,000 years ago, that they felt some connection to these birds, and they felt that they were magical, and somehow they were trying to tap into this these fellow creatures that inhabited the world with them. And they felt like if they could establish some kind of communion with these birds, that magical good things would happen, or at least transcendent things would happen. And when I started writing the book, I said, I want to find out when was the first time humans paid attention to crows or ravens. And this seems to be the case with that painting in this cave in France. So that's the oldest evidence that I was able to find, and that I think humans have found. So
certainly. And in mythology, what would be the first one as you write? That would be the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Yes. Yeah. That was something I really, it's like, I have to find out what was the first time a crow or raven was mentioned in written form by a human. And yes, it's in Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh, as I write about it, and this is anybody familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh, it came down in its current form. I mean, you can go into Barnes and Noble or on Amazon and buy translations today, but it was written over centuries in different parts. But scholars could say, "Oh, this is the same story." So anyway, at some point, I think Gilgamesh, the initial stone tablets were written in about 20,000 BCE, so 20,000, 22,000 years ago. But around 15,000 years ago, or 12,000, I'm kind of sketchy on the exact timeline. Somehow it all came together. Anyway, a raven is mentioned because scholars will know that the Gilgamesh has a flood story that predates the Christian tale of Noah. So, it's in this capacity that Gilgamesh, in one of his adventures, or one of his companions, there is a great flood. They're on a boat, and one of the characters in this ancient epic sends the raven out to find land, and the raven does not come back. It's not the raven isn't like a huge presence in the story. Doesn't play a significant role, but it is that first mention. I'm fairly certain from everything I've read, which is just, again, kind of like, wow, Gilgamesh is the oldest writing that we humans seem to know about, and there's a raven in it. So that's significant.
For sure, for sure. And then, of course, this flood story starts to appear in different cultures, and the most famous one is obviously in the Hebrew Bible, when Noah releases a dove. But you also you find all these rabbinical, apocryphal stories where the raven is actually, he's more of the trickster. He's not really liked by the ancient Hebrews, is he?
Yeah, the raven. I had to read that passage, and there's great websites. There's a website called archive.org that has all these journals and writings from like 150, 120 years ago, and so much more. And that was a great resource. But yeah, I just okay, I got to go see what I can find. And there's these ancient rabbinic texts that have been translated into English. And yeah, and in one of them, raven is he can talk. He's on the ark with Noah. And again, this is not the Christian Hebrew Old Testament. This is a Hebrew rabbinic writing that the rabbinic scholar who translated them in the early 1900s. The text he translated, I think they range from around 400 Common Era to about 1400 Common Era. But anyway, yeah, the raven is Noah says, Raven, go see if land's out there. And the raven gets an attitude and says, "What? You're trying to get rid of me so you can lust after my wife?" And I had to read that passage like 5 times. It's like, am I reading this correctly? And it's like, yes, that's what it is.
Wow,
So,
Noah was really lonely at that time. He was desperate.
But and what amazed me about that episode is in the Raven trickster tales that are told among the Northwest Pacific Native American tribes, Raven is a trickster.
Right.
And if you read some of the Raven trickster tales, Raven has an attitude. Sometimes he's not a nice person. Look, I'm calling him a person. He's not nice. He tries to satiate his own desires, whether it's food or lusting after human women or whatever. But to me, it's very amazing and significant that this ancient Hebrew text has this scene of where Raven's got attitude, he's a trickster,
right.
And then you fast forward to these Native American tales, which the oral history of those may be 200 or 300 or 400 years. I'm not quite sure, but the ones that have come down to us, Raven is a trickster. He's got an attitude. He will do things to please himself, and he inadvertently ends up helping mankind or human when he's really just trying to satiate his own needs. So there's that connection there that this ancient, Middle Eastern culture of the ancient Hebrews and the Native Americans of the North American continent, they see these birds very similarly. So that's kind of mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I mean, you would say that the raven is simply a image that appears in our unconscious from the archetype of the trickster, which was a very important force to the survival of all cultures. So.
Yes, yeah, and in fact, here in East Central Florida, I'm going to be giving a talk at a local Unitarian Universalist church.
Wow, cool.
On tricksters in different cultures and spiritual traditions, and Raven's going to be a big part of that, but also coyote in the Southwest Native Americans, and of course Zen tricksters. So the list goes on and on.
Yeah, they're all over, and you also mentioned too, Rick. There's a story where Noah sends out the raven and he gets preoccupied eating at some bloated corpse that he sees it. And then when he has sex with Ham, Noah's son, I mean, this guy's wild.
Well, the Ham episode that is out there, and I can't remember how deep I dive into it in the book, but there is a researcher that says that was a result of a mistranslation of that story that somehow took hold. So the raven's relationship with Ham in the Hebrew text, that's an open question scholarly, because that's what gained hold. But there is a small group of scholars that say, "Oh, I can show you where this mistranslation happened and it took root." Da 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 da. So for whatever that's worth. So,
how about the Egyptians? What do you know about the crows and Egyptians?
I I did not come across very much. I can't really say anything that I came across Corvids as far as Egyptian mythology. I have to confess, I didn't look that deeply um, because when I was scoping out the book, I realized, in fact, that's what happened when when I turned in my original first draft manuscript. I gave my editor a heart attack because she wrote back and said, "Rick, you've written too much. You're going to have to cut." So anyway, I don't mean to be an excuse on that, but um, there was just so much crow and raven lore. I had to so I focused on the ancient Norse, the ancient Celts, and Native Americans, and there's so much other lore. But to answer your question honestly, I don't know how much of a presence there is in Egypt and Egyptian lore and mythology, and I need to dive deeper into that. But I don't think it's significant, or I backwardsly, I would assume that that would have been more prevalent in all of my research if there was something just monstrously like, whoa. The Celts and the Norse, Odin and his ravens, and the Native Americans. I mean, there's so much mythology, oral traditions, and that have been passed down, that have been translated. Uh, but that hasn't been the case in the Egyptian pantheon from what I have seen.
But do they have crows or ravens in that area of the world?
Well, from my readings, their crows and ravens are on every continent except Antarctica. Now, whether they're in that the Nile River Valley, I'm not sure. I have to be honest. I can't say yes or no. I'm I don't know. I shouldn't speculate, but I would think the Egyptians were so keyed into the animal powers, spiritual. I mean, there's of course Horus, the Anubis, all their so much of their pantheon is quote unquote animal friendly. So if there had been, I think they would have noted that and it would have struck them, but maybe they did have them and they just kind of ignored those birds. I'm not sure.
Maybe there were Brandon Lee fans too.
Well,
They wanted to have respect.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. It's but especially, I mean, the Egyptians were so I don't know, this is overgeneralizing, but they were so aware and concerned with afterlife, death, and the passage from this life into the next, and Anubis being a psychopomp that guides the souls into the afterlife, and all the burial rituals with the mummies and the pyramids. That if there had been crows or ravens around there in any significant numbers, I would think they would have noticed. Crows and ravens, they feed off carrion. They're omnivores. They eat everything, including corpses.
Right.
So, and I don't know. I'm speculating here, and maybe I should just shut up. And then after we get off of here, I will go. I will go on a great search for my next book, the Egyptians and Corvids. So,
They sure had hawks though, because of Horus the Hawk, right? They had that.
right. Yeah.
I just looked it up, and apparently the pied crow, or Corvus albus, is commonly found around the Nile. So,
Okay.
in these days, in these days, what they have. But a long time ago, you don't know if the crows made it over. Maybe they migrated over the years, so we don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing is just the sheer geography. Here in Florida, somebody reported just a month ago that they saw a house crow in Tampa. Now, house crows, that's what Mark Twain wrote about when he stayed in India. He wrote an essay or a first person essay about his encounters with a crow in India and about how smart it was. And I believe it was the species that was called a house crow. But anyway, so obviously, if there was one, and they have distinctive markings, not all crows or ravens are pure black. Uh, but if there is one in Florida, somehow it hitched a ride on a boat or a plane. I don't think it flew over here. So yeah, all these migratory patterns are constantly, in play.
Yeah, you never know. And obviously, crows and ravens appear, like you said, when there's death. If there's a battlefield or a pandemic in ancient times, they're there with, putting the handkerchief over their neck saying, yummy. We've got to feed. Is that why, Rick, crows and ravens are associated with death? Or they're not nocturnal, are they?
That's the prevailing theory, and I think it seems very obviously, I think it's correct. But yeah, crows roost at night. They're not nocturnal. Um, when it gets sunset here in Palm Coast, the 4 or 6 crows come by every day. I throw them crackers or popcorn. If I hear them, I will go out to my backyard and spread them crackers. And this group of crows, it seems like every spring there's a new crew, and people will ask me, how can you tell the difference? They all look alike. Well, their behaviors will be different.
Right.
The crows that would come, and it seems like every spring, and maybe it has to do with their mating timelines and all that, but every spring it seems like there's different crows. And one year there were 3 crows who came by, and they would take the crackers and disappear. And then one day I figured out they're going on to the roof of my house. And then this year the crows, they got different trees they go to. But anyway, back to death. So yeah, it's not associations with night or nocturnal or shadows. The crows, they will, from what I've read, they will travel as far as 40 miles in a day when they wake up, because they will roost in groups together. And they will travel up to 40 miles just foraging for food and doing their crow thing and then go back. But yeah, in the ancient European battlefields, crows and ravens, after battles and there's corpses, uh, humans began to notice that the crows and ravens would swoop down and feed.
And they probably thought they're also carrying souls. They might be carrying souls to a different world or opening portals or something.
Exactly. There's then once you see that physical aspect, and then it's a very short, not even a leap, that okay, why are they associated with death? And there's in some of the Norse tales, the ravens are talking to the Valkyries, who take the bodies of the slain Vikings to Valhalla, and the ravens are they kind of know, uh, they're just part of the natural order of observing all this, and they kind of know who's going to die and who's not, and what that there's going to be bloodshed. But obviously, the crows and ravens were noticed feeding on the corpses, and so they became identified as like, whoa. And in fact, the ancient Norse would note, if ravens in that part of the world, if ravens were around, that was very prophetic. They had their raven banners that they would literally. It was the women of the Norse villages who would create these banners with ravens on them drawn. And if the banners were flapping about when they were going on raids, sea raids, that was a good omen. And if they were drooping, that was a bad omen. And I couldn't find out. It's like, to me, if I'm a Viking on a ship and the Raven flag is drooping, I'm going to turn around and go home. But they seem to have ignored that and just forged ahead with their battles. It's very interesting that Bernd, Berndt, Burnt, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Heinrich. He's written a lot of books on ravens, and he was the one. He's a wildlife biologist too, and he's the one that noticed that ravens and wolf packs in southern central Canada and in Montana and Wyoming and in the American upper, um, around the border up there, that uh, ravens would follow wolf packs and wait for uh, wolves to kill elk, and then after the wolves fed, then the ravens would go down and feed. But it got even more creepier because this scientist found out that the ravens would lead or guide the wolf packs to where the elk herds were. That somehow,
interesting.
Yeah, there's this interspecies communication or collaboration going on, and this has been documented by science, and it's why Heinrich calls ravens wolf birds, because they have this symbiotic relationship. So it's not just the ravens following the wolves and waiting for them to make a kill. It's the wolves are somehow following the ravens to an elk herd, and then, okay, wolves, you kill them, and then we're going to share in the bounty. So, which is pretty freaky.
Yeah.
But again, those crows and ravens associated with death. When I was writing the book, I I had a number of friends who said, "Ooh, I don't really like crows." It's like, "Ooh, what are you writing a book about crows? I don't like the way they sound." And they're actually considered songbirds. People can't believe that.
Really? Wow. Didn't know that.
They're part of that classification of songbirds. But yeah, a friend of mine, she saw a crow take down a dove, killed it and ate it. Again,
Wow.
crows are omnivores. So, it's that whole Disney cycle of life thing. They're they're omnivores. They'll eat anything. They will eat other eggs. Hawks will raid the nest of crows. Crows will raid the nest of the red-shouldered hawks that I see around here. So it's that, nature is not pretty some of the times.
It's kind of mafioso.
It kind of is, and that's how, especially in those Native American trickster tales, there's it's a pretty nasty tale of Raven singular, Raven personified. It's Raven the trickster, where he encounters a bear, and I forgot which tribe of the Pacific Northwest, but there's a tale where he encounters a bear and some other animal. Anyway, Raven ends up tricking the bear. Somehow he's able to get the bear, and somehow he's able to turn the bear inside out, and the bear is not magically reincarnated. So basically, Raven kills this bear by turning it inside out, and so it's pretty gruesome. And here it is. It's a Raven tale, so it's not a nice little fairy tale for little kids. It's all those tales have some kind of life lesson there, even if the lesson is life will mess you up and you can die. So anyway.
Oh yes, I love these old myths, and yeah, and I've done, like you have done, a lot of research on the trickster too. Fascinated. I mean, I think the trickster is change. Trickster is the natural order that we either change or die. And the trickster's gift, they hurt us and our old selves die, but we do get to walk through those other doors into a better society, a better personality, a better life. But there's always a price. They don't really align to our morals as much as we'd like to think.
Yeah, and I touch on this in my book, uh, this tradition of crazy wisdom, and crows and ravens can fall into that tradition. This crazy wisdom, where these crazy wisdom teachers from the East, from the Far East, in Zen Buddhism, in India, continental Hindu, all those, they will shock us out of our robotic. And
Right.
I explore this motif in my book because it's the bedrock of these magical exercises, if you want to call them that, of how these birds can help us. It's get this communion. What I use the word communion a lot with the mysteries, with the other realms, because Colin Wilson, one of my favorite writers, British writer who wrote a lot about the occult and mysteries and that. But his thing was, and he was not the only one to expound on this, but his thing was, we humans fall too easily into the robotic mind,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to shake ourselves out of this robot, because we'll let the robot take over the steering wheel and we'll just go day by day through mundane reality. But if you have that trickster element in there, it will shock us out of this mundane existence.
Right.
And that's when things start to happen. And my key motif that I probably repeat it too much in my book is that if we alter our consciousness, ALTER, then we can alter ALTAR, our
Love
consciousness.
it.
So if we can shove that robot mind to the side, or what the Buddhists call the monkey mind, it's like we're sitting here talking, and it's like, at any moment we could start thinking. I could start thinking, oh, I want a chocolate donut. Oh, wait, crows, raven, Homer, chocolate donut. Where's the chocolate
Yeah.
donut? So that monkey mind will just so that's really a huge part of my pagan path, is connecting to nature. And here, Gaia, the earth goddess, has blessed us, everybody, even if you're not on a pagan path, with these creatures that are just behave and are very mysterious and uncanny. And for me, they're evidence that there is some greater powers at work, that we humans are sharing the planet with. We're not just the top dogs. And that's a very common motif in Native American spirituality, that
Right.
the animals aren't below us, that there is great wisdom and intelligence there.
Of course.
And for me, using various, what Mircea Eliade called shamanic techniques of ecstasy, that way we can alter our consciousness, and it doesn't have to be hallucinogenic drugs. I mean, for me, it's music. I play sitar, just taking solitude, breath work, all the classic occult mystics techniques are a way to shock us out of this everyday reality. And when that happens, it doesn't mean you're going to see the face of God or goddess, but you're going to see things differently. And for me, when that happens, and I can't make it happen at will, but when it does happen, then I feel closer to experiencing the mysteries that are out there. And then suddenly things start, life gets richer. And not that all the questions are answered,
No.
but it's just that, oh, okay, we are here to do something beyond just go work at that chocolate donut shop, come home, and and have a enchilada, and then go to bed.
Right.
If that makes
said.
I don't mean to be preaching. I'm telling this is my path.
Love Rick's energy and vast understanding of Corvids. And the puns and literary references ain't so bad either. For all subs, we'll continue with the second part of Rick's interview. For all non-subs, thanks for being here, and please sub on Patreon, Red Circle, and AB Prime for the full flight.